According to the Code of Ethics, a member reflects credit on the profession when he or she A. places the clients first, B. practices in a professional and ethical manner, or C. consults with other members on a regular basis. These are all really positive things, but I think the key thing here is reflects on the profession, is how we're practicing in a professional and ethical manner. This is going to be reflected more on how clients perceive us and how other members perceive us in this, but we want to practice with integrity, and that's going to reflect well on the investment profession. Answer B. According to the CFA Institute Code of Ethics, CFA Institute members and candidates must do all of the following except A. act with integrity and dignity, B. exercise independent judgment, or C. not knowingly violate the Securities Acts and laws. This one's tough because these are all things that we should do or not do, or that we should do. However, A and B are specifically in the code and this part of the code, and C, not knowingly violating the Securities Acts and laws, is not specifically called out. So while it's something that we should do, it's not a part of this specific part. So answer C. Which of the following is not a possible disciplinary sanction with respect to the CFA Institute's enforcement of the code and standards? A. private censure. They can do this, so we can rule that out. We're looking for something they cannot do. B. payment of a fine. That sounds like it'll be our answer. The CFA Institute can't fine you. And C. suspension of a candidate from further participation in the CFA program. They can also do that. So they can revoke your charter, they can suspend your charter, or take this private censure route, but they can't fine you. Answer B. Tim Peters, CFA, is a senior investment manager at Staples Asset Managers. He will be leaving the company at the end of the month to join Gray Capital as a chief investment officer, where his major responsibilities will be to increase the funds under management. During his last day at Staples Asset Managers, Tim contacts two of the clients he brought to Staples and informs them of the services he would offer them if they moved their accounts to Gray Capital. Under the CFA Code and Standards, Tim Peters most likely A. violated standard 4A duties to employers. I would lean towards this being the answer right off the bat. While we're still working at our previous employer, we cannot be contacting current clients to see if they're going to come with us to our new employer. That's going to violate duties to employers. It doesn't matter if he brought the clients to Staples, which is his current employer. These are now clients of Staples. He doesn't own those clients. And depending on the non-compete agreement he may have, he may not be able to reach out to clients directly even after he leaves. Then for B, we have did not violate and did not violate. So we can go ahead and rule those out since we want to go with the violation answer. Answer A. Mark Roberts works as a portfolio analyst at First Community Trust. He is charged with managing the account of one Sarah Sanders, a client. Ms. Sanders pays First Community Trust a fee based on the performance of assets in her portfolio. Mr. Roberts' employer pays him a salary for managing Ms. Sanders' account. Sarah Sanders offers Mr. Roberts an all expenses paid trip to Las Vegas, including free accommodation and use of her yacht, provided that she earns at least 20% yearly pre-tax profit from her portfolio. What should Mr. Roberts do concerning the offer? A. Immediately inform his employer of the arrangement before accepting it. That sounds like a good option so far. If he is going to consider taking this, the employer definitely has to sign off on it first, because this can definitely create conflicts of interest among other clients that Mark Roberts might be the portfolio manager for. B. Accept the offer, but only after assessing the likelihood of the proposed level of performance. We can rule that out since that's not necessarily relevant to whether or not we should accept this. And C. Wait until the yearly results are out before accepting the offer, and then inform his employer of the arrangement only if results meet Ms. Sanders' present condition. We should be disclosing this ahead of time and accepting it ahead of time, not after the fact. So that's going to leave A as our best answer. Zhang Yi, CFA, is an analyst at Power Stocks Incorporated. Power Stocks plans to announce a change in recommendation from a hold to a sell on YYZ stock. Yi happens to be a member of the team that decided to change the recommendation. Yi's father has an account at Power Stocks Incorporated that contains YYZ stock, so his father is a client, it sounds like. According to the code and standards, trading on Yi's father's account should most likely begin. A, as soon as the information is disseminated to all clients. That sounds correct. Even though this is Yi's father and could be a related account, he is a client, so should be treated just as all other clients are. B, only after the recommendation is announced to the general public. We don't need to do that since he's a client and we're allowed to trade client stocks before we announce things to the public. And this isn't material non-public information. This is just their report and recommendation on the stock. C, only after Yi, as a beneficial owner, has given an appropriate amount of time for his clients and his employer to act. Again, his father is a client, so should be treated as all the other clients are. Answer A. Which of the following is most likely correct regarding Standard 1B, independence and objectivity? C. Members and candidates should solicit gifts from their clients only after attaining great portfolio returns. That does not sound like a good idea. We'll rule that out for obvious reasons. B. Members and candidates should issue favorable reports, even if forged, of top companies upon request. We'll rule that out as well. If you're forging reports, that's certainly going to be a violation. And C, members and candidates should not accept gifts, benefits, compensations, or considerations from their clients or prospective clients. That seems like our best answer by far. We will go with answer C. A financial analyst who is a CFA member sends a research report on a company to his supervisor. The supervisor approves the report, but the analyst soon discovers that the supervisor plans to release a version of the report that shows stronger earnings estimates than the original report without a reasonable and adequate reason. In response to this, the analyst should most likely A, let the supervisor do as he pleases. We can probably rule that out. He should likely take some action, at least talking to the supervisor and getting their perspective, or figuring out if he can convince him to change the earnings back down. B, take up the issue with regulatory authorities. That might be a little too dramatic of a next step, so I think we would lean towards ruling that out. And C, insist that the supervisor changes the earnings forecast or remove their name from the report. That sounds like the best answer by far, especially since there's no reasonable and adequate reason. We don't want to be associated with that for that reason, but we should also try and get them to change it back as well. Answer C. Jonathan Ingram, CFA, is a research analyst following Mountain Corp. All the information he has gathered suggests Mountain stock should be rated weak hold. During a recent dinner with a friend, Ingram overheard another experienced analyst saying that the stock should be rated buy. He returns to his office the next day and issues a buy recommendation. Ingram, A, has not violated CFA Institute standards of professional conduct. B, has violated, or C, has violated. So we're between has violated and has not violated. I think we would lean towards they have violated. They don't really have a good reasonable basis for changing this to buy. They just overheard another experienced analyst saying this. So their reasonable basis backs up weak hold, but we're doing buy. So there's some violation there. So why did we buy? Why did we violate? B, did we violate because he used material non-public information? There's no material non-public information. He's just using another analyst's opinion. There's no factual information that the analyst gave that was mentioned for that recommendation. And C, has violated because he did not have a reasonable and adequate basis for making his recommendation. That will be our answer. We don't have a reasonable and adequate basis. We're just following the herd of what another analyst said. Answer C. If a supervisor makes a reasonable effort to detect violations by their subordinates, but fails to detect a violation that occurs, he A, is in compliance with Standard 4C responsibilities of supervisors. I would lean towards this right now. We made a reasonable effort. We're not going to be perfect as humans, so there will potentially be stuff that falls through the cracks and there could still be violations, but as long as we're making a reasonable effort, that's the most important thing. B, is always in violation of Standard 4C responsibilities of supervisors. We'll rule that out. And 4C is only in violation of standard 4C responsibility of supervisors if the violation that occurs is punishable by law. Again, the key here is that reasonable effort. We're not going to be able to detect everything, and there's potentially always going to be some bad actors or things that we're not able to get to as supervisors. So we're going to go with A for making that reasonable effort.